Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's get into it. First of all, I want to start off like I always do by saying thank you for spending this time with me. This is the fourth installation on the Tarot series, Tarot Correspondence Study Series. And if you follow me so far, it's been an amazing journey. I found my consciousness impacted, my dreams, as well as my day-to-day life. My purpose in doing this study is because I had a very rudimentary understanding of Tarot, and it was beginning to impede upon my Kabbalah studies. So I decided to start this study group, share with others. Please comment, share what you know. Those who have shared thus far, thank you for all the good information, for the great books. And let's do it. Now, what I'm going to start off with, let me see something. I want to show, oh, I don't got it on here. And I'll show it here. I just got this book. Barbara G. Walker's The Secrets of the Tarot, Origins, History, and Symbolism. Anything by Barbara G. Walker is worthy of getting. I wish I had this book when I started the series, because then I could have incorporated it up until this point. So my intentions were to play catch up and then read everything up to the Emperor card, which is where we're at now. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get that studying in on my own. Hopefully, at some point, I'll just make this a point of study and we'll go through it together. But for now, I'm just going to read a few excerpts, not excerpts. I'm going to read through it and then we're going to skip up to the Emperor card. So, so far we've covered the Fool, the Magician, the High Priestess, or the Pappas, and the Empress, and now we're at the Emperor. Now, as you can see, I have two different cards here. The one to the far left is the Rider-Waite card for the Emperor, and then the one to the right is the Paul Foster Case Bota, Builders of the Aditium. That's his card. Personally, I prefer Paul Foster Case because his deck is more expressive. The symbology is there, and it's waiting to be decoded. What I found out is that A.E. Waite, he put a lot of occult lines in his writings, as well as in his tarot deck itself. And so I don't have the Bota deck yet. I will. The beauty of the Bota deck is that you have to hand paint it. And I'm certain that that will make an incredible impact on my psyche. So without further ado, let's dive into this Barbara G. Walker. So, part one, History's Mysteries. And she starts it off with I guess it's a poem by T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland. T.S. Eliot was definitely an occultist. And it goes like this. Madame Sosostris, famous clairvoyant, had a bad cold, nevertheless, is known to be the wisest woman in Europe with a wicked pack of cards. Here, said she, is your card, the drowned Phoenician sailor. Those are pearls that were in his eyes. Look. Here is Belladonna, the lady of the rocks, the lady of situations. Here is the man with 3 staves, and here the wheel. And here is the one-eyed merchant and his car, and this card, which is blank, is something he carries on his back, which I am forbidden to see. I do not find. The hanged man, fear death by water. I see crowds of people walking round in a ring. So clearly this is an allusion to the Tarot by T.S. Eliot. So the first chapter is the Sacred Tarot. And what you always have to remember is that sacred means secret. And secret by default implies sacred. So something that's secret is not so much something that's being kept from you as opposed to something that is sacred. And something sacred is not for the profane or the uninitiated. She says the tarot cards were the ancestors of the modern playing cards. Tarot suits of cups, wands, pentacles, and swords evolved into the symbolically related hearts, clubs, diamonds, and spades. The modern deck of 52 cards is a shortened version of the standard tarot deck of 78 cards. Of the 26 lost cards, only one now remains, the Joker or the Fool. So the Fool encompasses all those missing cards from the deck, the Joker, who usually doesn't play. Most people play without Jokers because people feel like the Joker is a cheat. Never thought about that. His card is not much liked. A common saying calls anything suspicious a Joker in the deck. Why were 26 cards, a third of the deck, removed? This is an important question because 22 of the 26 lost cards used to be the most significant ones. They were the suit of trumps called major arcana or greater secrets. Today's card players are obliged to designate one of the suits trumps. For trick-taking games because the real trump cards were abolished. Who abolished them? It seems the original enemies of the cards, greater secrets, were Christian clergymen. Their objections were based on more than some vague notion that cards were frivolous. One scholar writes, preachers have never liked playing cards, and it can be said that the story the cards tell is very much opposed to the basic tenets of Christianity. The issue was a religious one. Cards apparently conveyed a heretical message detested by the church. Here is a starting point for historical inquiry. What was the heretical message? Who interpreted the cards' arcane symbols and how? What did the games mean? Why did the church fathers think these little pasteboard cards so threatening as to call forth the most resounding ecclesiastical thunders? No doubt the thunders were serious. Saint Bernardino of Siena said the tarot was an invention of the devil, and the major arcana was the devil's breviary, in which various figures are painted just as they are in the breviaries of Christ, which figures show forth the mysteries of evil. Another churchman claimed the devil invented the cards that he might easier bring in idolatry among men. The trump cards seem to have been the idols referred to. The trump suit was called rungs of a ladder leading to the depths of hell. In 1376, the cards were forbidden in Florence. In 1378, they were banned in Germany. In 1381, they were condemned in Marseille. In 1397, they were forbidden in Paris and the city of Ulm. In 1441, importation of cards was prohibited in Venice. In 1450, a Franciscan friar denounced the cards in northern Italy. In 1452, Cardinal John Capistran caused a great heap of packs of cards to be burned in the marketplace of Nuremberg as if they were living witches. A century earlier, the monk John Brefeld apparently learned a sympathetic interpretation of the cards. He made the tactical error of writing that in them, the state of the world as it is now is most excellently described and figured. Other clergymen overruled this opinion, calling the cards a devil's book and a secret scripture of Gnostic heretics. When the cards first became popular in Europe, the state of the world as it is now included many pockets of opposition to the entrenched religion, widespread disillusionment with the church, and a tendency to seek alternate faiths. Europe was poised on the brink of the Renaissance. An influx of new ideas from Eastern lands had stimulated intellectual curiosity and revived the old Indo-European paganism that once gave both East and West their common heritage of language, culture, and religion. These new ideas percolated through all levels of society, so that not only intellectuals, but even illiterate peasants were beginning to question the church's right to control their minds. And that's the power of tarot, knowledge of self. And there's a quote, I'm going to butcher it, but essentially, A person with knowledge of self is unfit to be ruled, because once you have knowledge of self, you realize that I am God in the macrocosm, and that this journey as the fool, and you embark upon this journey into materiality and return from whence you came. No one has the right to dictate uh, your journey, how you choose to approach God, uh, any of these things. So I can see where the church found it in opposition to their designs, more or less. Church-sponsored crusades had sent many of Europe's rude barbarians to the eastern centers of what was at the time a higher civilization. Crusades didn't find streets paved with silver as they had expected, but they did find their Saracen adversaries adept in such interesting top subjects as art, mathematics, algebra, alchemy, astronomy, and astrology, and many mystical philosophies. These shook the warriors of pilgrims' Christian faith in the church that was still proclaiming itself to be the world's only legitimate source of truth. Now, what she's discussing are the Templars. The Saracens had used cards for gaming and divining since at least the 8th century. The Spanish word for cards, naipes, N-A-I-P-E-S, derived from the Saracenic Naib, naib. Another cognate was the Hebrew naibi, N-A-I-B-I, sorcery. Sorcery was a Judeo-Christian blanket term for alien religious observances in accordance with biblical rule that all gods of the heathen were devils, Deuteronomy 32:17. It seems many Europeans thought the figures on the cards really were pagan deities. Eastern peoples long used pasteboard picture cards as unbound sacred books. Sacred means secret. To show the attributes of goddesses and gods and to teach religious doctrines to children and other illiterates while they played games. So the church clearly understood the power of images and the ability to identify and associate with those images. The same principle is well known in pre-Christian Europe. Ancient ludi or sacred games have been redefined by the church as frivolity and carnival clownishness, giving rise to the word ludicrous. But the original purpose of their dances, masks, costumes, and processions was to reveal gods to their worshipers. A pageant once meant a series of mystical revelations in the sacred drama. Never knew that. In component paginate, P-A-G-I-N-A-E, became medieval pages. Movable floats or stages in the mystery play, each showing a tableau of divine persons or symbols. Such plays still appear in the Orient, demonstrating the Eastern origin of many European figures in traditional miracle drama and literature, commedia and pageant, as well as their formerly sacred connotations. Not only Oriental symbols, but also much similar material from Occidental, Western or European paganism found its way into Renaissance games and tarot cards. The trump cards so disliked by churchmen took their title from the holy pageant known to the ancient world as triumph. Sacrificial progressions in sacred games in pagan Rome were under the charge of a high priest called a triumphator. That's where we get Trump from, right? The central figure in a triumph was usually an apotheosized hero, sacred king, emperor, or a man impersonating a god, like Jesus in Jerusalem's annual triumphal procession on the Day of Palms. Excuse me, get a little water. I don't know why I don't have my book stand out here. Where were we? which was okay. Let me go back. The central figure in a triumph was usually an apotheosized hero, sacred king, emperor, or a man impersonating God, like Jesus in Jerusalem's annual triumphal procession on the Day of Psalms, on the Day of Palms, which was originally held in honor of the goddess Ishtar and her dying god consort Tammuz, Ezekiel 8:14. In one of Rome's most venerated rites, a triumphal procession circumambulated the city. They circled it in a clockwise motion, calling on the Lares, ancestral ghosts, and the goddess variously named Ceres, Carmenta, or Corna, which is where probably where carnival come from. Ceres is, of course, will relate to Ceres star, but also Cybele, I believe. Maker of all flesh, whom Ovid described as a goddess of the olden time, and Plutarch called fate presiding over human birth. Her priestesses, the Carmentis, the Carmentis sang hymns called Carmen, which passed into Old English as Cyrum, Cyrm, meaning a sacred song, then became the charm supposedly spoken or sung by witches. The Carmentis triumphal procession ended with the cry of Trionfe, which became Triumphi, Italian Trionfi, English Trump. So the very word Trump and triumph are very magical words. So sweet. This shows a specific link between the Tarot's major arcana cards and the idea of a sacred procession in which traditionally deities displayed their exuvia, it's a French word, exuviae, or attributes. These displays included images, masks, costumes, songs, dances, and stylized postures that later descended into the repertoire of carnival clowns. Now, carnival coming from carne, series, Carmentes, and later charm, or charms, who resembled the fool leading the tarot possession of trumps. Clowns performed antics derived from Italian antico, Latin antiquus, meaning ancient, venerable. I'm thinking now, like there's a lot of clown phobia. People are afraid of clowns, and so here we just learned the origin of the clown and its connection to the fool or the joker. So, I'm going to get some thought. In England, the fool's dance was an antic hay, a figure 8 step based on the international holy infinity sign. I'm going to read that again. In England, the fool's dance was an antic hay, a figure 8 step based on the international holy infinity sign, which had a peculiar significance in the tarot, as we shall see. Songs that accompany such dances call for the antic hay. Figure in the chorus, for example, hey, nani nani, or hey, dairy down. The goddess Carna was once the presiding deity of carnival. We still have Carnival that is celebrated in South America. So we see the origins to a lot of this right here, which still conceals remnants of the old religion under pretended clownishness. Pagan rivals of the Christian Savior continued to be sacrificed, incarnate in beasts or effigies as Green George, Lord Baal, the May King, the Lord of Misrule, Prince of Fools, Carnival King, and other relics of the ancient king of games. Rex Ludorum. actually sacrificed at the end of his temporary kingship. And you can find information on this in Robert Fraser's Golden Bow. Very good book. It's several volumes, but it's worth having. I only have one volume. I believe it's like 10 or 12 volumes, might even be more. And each volume is about twice the size of a Bible. So they're thick, but packed with good information. It talks about the temporary king, the fact that he sacrificed at the end of his reign. Usually it's a year. Once upon a time, it was an actual sacrifice, then it became symbolic, and something was sacrificed in its place. I believe it's carried on today when someone's in office and he's essentially crucified. No matter who's in office, he's vilified. It doesn't matter, Democrat, Republican, black, white, male, eventually female. So, yeah. His death became less literal, but he still suffered a mock execution each year in the role of the sacred king of the rebels. If Christian priests scented heresy in the effigies hung between heaven and earth, crucified on trees, sent to hell, and resurrected to bear away the sins of the people, they were slyly told it was only a game. So it trivialized what the church wanted to take so seriously or sacredly. Games of cards, wheels, and dice boards had always been popular media for religious instruction in the East. Worshippers of Vishnu placed a portal of each of their gods' 10 incarnations on the count cards of their suits. Cards in sequence imitated holy processions in which certain divine images were carried, and masked costumed human beings impersonated supernatural entities for the edification of the faithful. Like, this still goes on in Africa today. A lot of tribes, they have these ceremonies where someone imitates the god, and it's always a very magical or mystical thing. I've seen where the person imitating the deity or the element is set on fire, and then they miraculously emerge from the fire, or the person imitating the deity might float, and you'll see no strings involved. So this pageantry is ancient. She's discussing basically medieval Europe, but it goes back way further. Sequential cards also copied the instructive picture gallery that was placed along corridors leading to the central Holy of Holies in Oriental temples. Each picture meant a new revelation in the process of initiation. For those who couldn't make the pilgrimage to the temple, holy pictures could be painted on cards for private meditation. This important Oriental concept was copied by Europeans in several ways. A Christianized version became known as the Stations of the Cross. Mystery cults in general led the novice through a series of stations in the temple where he would meet supernatural beings, either holy images or costumed temple personnel. He received instructions and symbolically repeated the life story of the Savior God in order to become one with him, and thus achieve the same resurrection. This is carried on in almost every what we call secret or sacred society, which is the birth, death, and rebirth, the initiation into the mysteries. So a lot of these societies have these evil connotations. People think because they have secrets that they're, they're plotting on how to take over the world. But the thing is, this is ancient. And like I just pointed out, this goes far beyond Middle Eastern Europe. Barbara G. Walker's pointing out how there are connections to the Orient, and the Orient is definitely connected to ancient Egypt, what we call the Middle East, Mesopotamia, and places like that. All right, let's do it. Yeah, definitely glad I got this book. Where was I? The important Oriental concept was copied by Europeans in several ways. A Christianized version became known as Stations of the Cross. Mystery cults in general led the novice through a series of stations in the temple where he could meet supernatural beings, either holy images or costumed temple personnel. He received instruction and symbolically repeated the life story of the Savior God in order to become one with him and thus achieve the same resurrection. In Egypt, a worshiper of Osiris became an Osiris. In Greece, a worshiper of Dionysus similarly acquired grace or enthusiasm, the state of having the God within. The idea of salvation depended on merging the self with the God by sacramentally eating him, by imitating him, by memorizing his myths and teachings. Christianity copied the idea, but devotees of the older Eastern savior gods had it first, as Renaissance travelers had just begun to realize. So that was the true danger that the tarot represented. If anybody became a serious student and began to look further, they would realize that Jesus as the Christ figure was not an original concept. There's a great book about the 16 crucified saviors previous to Christ. So that's shown another way where they kind of looked into the future and said, these cards could undermine everything we got going on, which if they were smart, they would have incorporated the cards into their get down, because suppression of an idea only makes it more valuable, more cherished, and it's going to push it back up to the top. Crusaders, traders, and pilgrims returning from the Holy Land brought more than ideas and merchandise back to Europe. Their ships brought oriental black rats, which brought their own fleas, which in turn brought the scourge of the 14th century bubonic plague. A modern reader can hardly picture the devastation wrought by this pestilence, while whole villages and towns were wiped out, entire districts were abandoned, crops went untended, and famine followed the Black Death. By the end of the 15th century, the population of Europe had been reduced by at least 50%. So this could show also another reason to fear tarot. Tarot was brought from the East, and back then they didn't understand virology. So I'm pretty sure they thought somebody connected a dot and said, this didn't happen until we got to tarot. But all in all, it wasn't so much the tarot, it was the commerce and lack of hygiene. Under such agonizing conditions, many people openly doubted the goodness of a God who, as the Pope himself said in a bull, a papal letter, deliberately sent these horrors to afflict the Christian people for their sins. A law professor wrote, "The hostility of God is stronger than the hostility of man." The church failed to rise to the crisis. Clergymen fled plague-stricken districts in panic, fear, and neglect. The dead rotted in the streets, unshriven and unburied. According to superstitious notions of the day, omission of the last rites automatically damned plague victims to an eternity of torture and hell, deserved or not. Survivors bitterly resented this injustice to their relatives. So think about it. Somebody's forcing a religion down your throat. They're telling you that these certain rites have to be observed and you're going to burn in hell. Yet they ran in fear instead of staying in faith of their own religions, their own doctrines, and what they profess. So, of course, again, like I just said, you try to ban something, you actually just run people towards it. French clergymen made the mistake of advertising the cult of Saint Roch, R-O-C-H, as a sure defense against the plague. They said no sickness could enter a house bearing on its door the letters VSR, Vive Saint Roch. The mocking letters stood on the door, as many houses left empty, their inmates all dead, a monument to crude superstition. The people's impersonations of ecclesiastical and divine indifference to human suffering brought back the old Gnostic image of the demon god, the demiurge. 1,000 years earlier, Manichaeans and other Gnostic sects of the primitive church called Jehovah an evil demiurge who made the material world to entrap souls as he had the serpent to entrap Adam and Eve. They quoted Isaiah to show that God himself admitted having created evil, the ever famous Isaiah 45, verse 7, and argued that subordinate demons tormented mankind only by God's will and permission. The Orthodox Church actually agreed with the heretics on this point, but never carried the argument to its logical conclusion that a deity who ruled demons must be an archdemon. The Gnostic view became popular as the Renaissance gathered momentum. In practice, the real divinity of the Renaissance seems to have been the Christianized version of the Great Mother, which is Sophia, whom the pagans worshipped as Juno, Diana, and Ceres, used to address as Mother of God, Blessed Virgin, the Queen of Heaven, Mary, the new Great Mother, won the hearts of the people where the patriarchal deities failed. The vitality of Christ's own church has often seemed to depend on her rather than him. She alone had mercy on the suffering. Germanus said she could turn away God's threat and sentence of damnation. Therefore, the Christian people trustfully turn to you, refuge of sinners. A Franciscan wrote, when we have offended Christ, we should go first to the Queen of Heaven and offer her prayers, fasting, vigils, and alms. Then she, like a mother, will come between thee and Christ, the Father who wishes to beat us, and she will throw the cloak of mercy between the rod of punishment and us and soften the king's anger against us. That brings to mind the two pillars in Kabbalah, mercy and severity. Old woodcuts show God the Father shooting the arrows of plague, inflation, and war at the world, while human beings pleaded with the Virgin to claim kinship with them and save them from God's wrath. Man, I stumbled over this last paragraph because something dawned on me. If you've been following my page, I did a video on Cybele, who is Ceres, the mother goddess, the Magna Mater. Mary's a version of, you can trace it back to Ishtar, Isis, Inanna. And so according to what Barbara G. Walker is saying, when times get hard, people flee to the maternal deities and not the paternal deities. And that kind of makes sense when we see some of these rituals going on in plain sight. They're all geared towards either constricting or restricting the divine feminine, which is represented by the feminine and material in this material reality, or it's designed to empower. So we find ourselves in the same space in a time frame of less than 1,000 years, where the demiurge is definitely saw as bad and the mother goddess is saw as good. Even the fear of goddesses like Kali, who were thought to be gruesome, punishing goddesses, they are now seen as the nurturing mother, the giver of all good gifts and graces. So I dropped that. It just struck me just reading this. So I know that my studies of tarot has definitely led me in the right direction, because that's something that I recognize just through these first 4 cards. I found myself making that same realization, having that same revelation. Where were we? In despair, men reverted to that strong unconscious trend towards mother worship that has been, and I got to stop again. That's what Bobby Hemmett pushed. That's why I always say that Bobby Hemmett was actually about 30 years too early. Bobby Hemmett's message was more or less for right now, because he pushed the divine feminine heavy. And that's where we are now, because the divine masculine, when things, Joseph Campbell speaks on this. The father figure is always seen as an ogre, as a punisher. No matter how cool of a dad you are, you can give your kids that look and they'll tighten up. So, where was I? Old woodcuts show God the Father shooting the arrows of plague, inflation, and war at the world, while human beings pleaded with the Virgin to claim kinship with them and save them from God's wrath. In despair, men reverted to the strong, unconscious trends toward mother worship that has been discerned even in the male-dominated societies where manifestations of the goddess were officially denied. Mary herself was denied by the early church, but accepted after the 5th century when it became clear that not even converts would tolerate the loss of their divine mother. Strong inclinations of the goddess worship may be seen in the feminine imagery of the tarot, hinting at one of the reasons for its success. Aside from its half-suppressed great mother, the Renaissance church offered little comfort. In 1360, the Pope admitted that many wealthy abbots and priests took up arms against their own flocks to participate in rapine and despoliation. Despot is in there somewhere. Despoliation, even in the shedding of blood. St. Bernard wrote that nearly every prelate sought to empty the pockets of his parishioners rather than to subdue their vices. St. Catherine of Siena wrote so bluntly of the priest's sins that even now, the English translation published under official Roman censorship discreetly and silently suppressed her all too candid descriptions. The friar Raymond Jean, I'm pretty sure, publicly declared, the enemies of the faith are among ourselves. The church which governs us is a symbol. The church which governs us is symboled by the great whore of the apocalypse who persecutes the poor. He was burned at the stake. Nobody wanted to hear that shit. Pierre de Bruce was also burned for declaring that praying to the cross was a pointless procedure, that God is no more in the church than in the marketplace, and that priests lie when they claim bits of bread were Christ's body given to people for their salvation. In 13th century Paris, reformers charged that the priests accused honest matrons of heresy and condemned them to death only because the same matrons had refused to consent to the priest's lascivious proposals. Bohemians publicly burned papal bulls at the pillory in Prague after stringing them around the neck of a prostitute who mocked them with lewd gestures. Conrad of Megenburg wrote a popular satire in which Lady Church denounced her own priests as hypocrites, whoremongers, and shameless worshippers of Lady Avarice and vainglory. Dreadful crusades of extermination were waged by Christian brethren of the sword and Teutonic knights against the pagan populations of Prussia, Livonia, Courland, and the Polish winds. Lithuanians were converted by military force in the 14th century. Every man, woman, and child among the Stedingers of the Weser River Valley was put to the sword for worshiping non-Christian deities and consulting wise women. 2 centuries of warfare and atrocities still failed to bring dissenting Balkan countries into the fold. As late as the 18th century, the monk Spiridon complained that many Bulgarians still worship their ancient thunder god, Perun. Perun is Norse in origin, instead of Jesus. Well over 1 million Cathari in the cities of southern France were massacred by papal decree for contesting the official theology and refusing to pay their tithes to Rome. Whole sub-nations like the Basque or the people of Navarre were declared heretics and witches in toto. Innumerable sects banded together to oppose the church, such as the Brothers and Sisters of the Free Spirit, the Poor Men of Lyons, the Waldenses, the Hussites, the Fratellis, Spiritual Franciscans, Dolcinists, Dolcinists, and many others who paid with their lives for holding unorthodox views. By the 13th century, it was becoming increasingly clear that despite the church's apparently complete conquest, chiefly by violence, Orthodox authority was being challenged on every side by rebellious heretics. Even though the papacy had reached the pinnacle of worldly power, the Crusaders were slaughtering thousands of unbelievers at home and abroad. The native populations of Europe stubbornly resisted the alien God who vilified their ancestral deities as demons and condemned their own natural thoughts and feelings as sins. Sounds real familiar, especially since we find ourselves at a time where books are once again beginning to be banned. And you might laugh and say, okay, they edited some Dr. Seuss books and banned some Dr. Seuss books. Dr. Seuss was a racist and this and that. Doesn't matter, because a pebble can start an avalanche. A snowball can start an avalanche, right? So what you have to realize is that these things begin with the whimper and they end with the cry. So again, before I get back to this book, I'm just going to say, get your libraries up. If you have PDFs, you print them out. You don't have access to a printer, even though, come on, you can go to a welfare center and you can print, even if it's only 10 pages at a time or whatever. You can always find a means to print out a book. You see me, if you follow me on here, you see that I do my unboxings and I show you books that I bought. I always buy my books used. I do that for a reason, because it's cheaper. A lot of times you'll find some of these books at $3. If you have the inclination, you slide through a Goodwill. You check out what they got. Every now and then there'll be a gem or a jewel in there, but you better get your books. Churchmen applied more and more pressure to the mutinous masses by threatening them not only with death, but with damnation to a crueler hell than any other religion had previously envisioned. An extraordinary sadism surfaced in these official visions of hell. St. Thomas Aquinas and other theologians insisted that the righteous, like themselves, would watch joyfully from heaven as the damned writhed in eternal torture. Having no pity on the sinners. Saint Bernardino of Siena said heaven couldn't be perfect without due admixture of groans from the damned. These motherfuckers was twisted. Moreover, the vast majority would go to hell and only a few would deserve heaven. Raymond Lull was declared a heretic for criticizing the mercy of a Christ who would consign nearly all human souls to such an eternity of torment. Now, keep in mind, as I'm reading all this, it ties into the Tarot, because what religion has become, this man-made construct, tells you that you are less than, that you are not worthy of ascension unless you go through another man. Yet Tarot and other spiritual systems declare otherwise. Instead of cleaning its own house, the church resorted to violent suppression of its critics. Thus, the Inquisition was born. God's Gestapo held Europe in a reign of terror for nearly 5 centuries, the greatest persecution known in history, exceeding even the 20th century Holocaust in Germany. The Inquisition ravaged all Christendom by its war on heresy. Historian Charles Lea called the inquisitorial system a standing mockery of justice, perhaps the most iniquitous that the arbitrary cruelty of man has ever devised. It created a police state in every village and hamlet on the continent, excepting only the Scandinavian countries, which paid no attention to Christianity until the 11th century and subsequently refused to admit the church's judges and tortures. Let me see how much longer this chapter is because I want to get to this Emperor card. Eat cats, man. 10 more pages. We'll stop here on page 10. I want to get this tarot cracking. This is a very interesting book. Very interesting book. But I need to get this cracking. Let's get to the Emperor card. Just remember, get you a copy of this book. Let me see, make sure I get it in there. The Secrets of the Tarot, Origins, History, and Symbolism by Barbara G. Walker. Let's get to it. I apologize for the rush. However, it is currently 2:14 a.m. out here. I want to complete this. So I'm going to stay in this book. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these different books with topics on the tarot card of the Emperor. And then from there, we're going to break down the symbology of each one. I know up to this point, it's kind of been kind of back and forth. I kind of didn't have a system, but now that we're on the fourth card, the Emperor card, I do have a system. And so I figure it's best first to read the explanation on the cards, and then we'll do our own research to understand the symbology of each card. And I think that'll go a lot smoother just in terms of progression. So let's go to the Emperor card. And I apologize for stopping because as much as I want to keep reading it, the show must go on. Okay, the Emperor. Now, Barbara G. Walker has her own deck of cards, so she has a totally different image for the Emperor. And of course, her card is all female, so deal with it. The Emperor. Among the significant symbols of the Emperor were the following. 1, he showed only his left profile, which you see in the Bolta card on the right. 2, he crossed one leg over the other, which you see on the Bolta card. His shield bore an eagle. There's no shield in either one. Like that of the Empress. Well, see, the Empress card that I'm familiar with, it has the symbol of Venus on it, I believe. Let me see if I'm pretty sure I got it in here. That's the High Priestess. There we go, the Empress card. So her shield bears the symbol of Venus on it. So there's just so many different decks. And of course, her leanings are towards the feminine, rightfully so. He held a scepter in his right hand, an orb in his left. Those two symbols remain true in both the Rider-Waite and you see in the Paul Foster Case deck. The scepter and orb were male and female sexual symbols of great antiquity. Ancient kings displayed these symbols to demonstrate a union of male and female, sacred principles in their own persons, imitating the manner in which Oriental gods united with various aspects of the great goddess to form a cosmic androgyne, male on the right hand half of the body, female on the left half. So showing himself in profile on the left is indicative of the feminine. But we also know that showing what we don't know, I'm going to share what I've learned, is that the profile to the left, he is essentially looking at the Empress, an acknowledgement of the feminine. Therefore, the scepter was always in the king's right hand to show his own phallic power. The orb was always in the left hand as an emblem of his divine consort, Mother Earth. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad said the cosmic androgyne was of the same size and kind as a man and a woman closely embracing. But other scriptures and icons describe one bisexual body. The Greeks, Eros, Phanes, and Hermaphroditus were similar bisexual entities whose real power lay in their feminine attributes. According to Mithraic mysteries, whose tenets deeply influenced the Gnostics, an emperor's right to rule was embodied in his goddess under his name of glory. Now, this goes back to ancient Egypt because the pharaoh's only right to rule came through the matriarchy, through the feminine aspect, which is why Isis is represented as a throne. Kings sit on thrones, so his symbol of authority is resting his laurels on the divine feminine. According to Mithridatic mysteries, whose tenets deeply influenced the Gnostics, an emperor's right to rule was embodied in his goddess under her name of glory, Antiochus of Comagene, 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 accordingly declared himself ruler on the grounds that his goddess was part of him. Perhaps for a similar reason, the Tarot emperor displayed his left feminine profile as he looked toward the empress. The ubiquitous left/female, right/male evolved very long ago, probably in Southeastern Asia. Worshippers of Shiva and their god followed the left-hand path, known as the way of the goddess. In Egypt, also, the left hand was the female hand, representing the goddess Ma'at. I'm going to highlight this because it's confirming something that I've suspected for quite some time. Because in Kabbalah, you have the left-hand path, which is Hermetic, and you have the right-hand path, which is Orphic. The left-hand path, which we now know is associated with the feminine, is secretive. Remember the old school commercial? Secrets strong enough for a man, but made for a woman. So yeah, I just think that's very relevant. So I'm going to highlight this real quick. Bear with me. I want to do okay. Let's get back to it. So the Hermetic path, the dark siders, the occult path, the left-hand path is the feminine path. The right hand represents her consort Thoth. The Babylonians prayed that the goddess might stand at one's left hand, the god at one's right. Babylonians prayed that the goddess might stand at one's left hand, the god at one's right. Oh, no, okay. Feminine, masculine, okay. Same thing can be found in your body with your nostrils, the left and right nostrils, Luna and Suna. The moon, which is dark, is always feminine. Sun is usually associated with masculine, usually. Although there are male moon deities and there are female sun deities. Let's see. The right hand represented her consort Thoth. Babylonians prayed that the goddess might stand at one's left hand, the god at one's right. Greek Pelopids tattooed a female sign on their left shoulder, a male sign on their right shoulder. Even Jewish tradition claims the left hand of God was female. The universal gesture of prayer was, and still is, to place two hands together. Booyaka, booyaka, I bring it straight to you. So even the act of prayer is designed to bring the masculine and feminine together and create the divine androgyne. The universal gesture of prayer was and still is to place the two hands together, originally a sign of the sexual sacrament uniting male and female powers as male and female bodies unite face to face. However, Christian fathers maintain that one should not let the feminine hand know what the masculine hand was doing. Matthew 6:3. The left hand need not know what the right hand is doing. Wow. So you see how a lot of people who didn't even grow up in church follow these same mandates, more so because they're ancient, but they've been twisted. When you hear things like the left hand don't need to know what the right hand is doing, we don't associate this with the Bible in Matthew chapter 6, verse 3. Yeah, I love researching and studying and connecting my own dots. I really do. Only recently has it been discovered that these ancient concepts may have had some basis in reality. The left side of the body seems to be controlled mostly by the brain's right hemisphere, to which attributed traditionally feminine qualities of intuition, imagination, emotional understanding, perception, and response. Conversely, the right side of the body seems to be controlled by the hemisphere of reasoning, abstract thought, traditionally called conscious or masculine. Of course, no individual, male or female, can be characterized as all one way or all the other. Both halves of the brain work together, so the modern notion of left and right sides of the personality may be as simplistic as the ancient one. However, certainly during the Christian era, everything connected with the left hand was anathematized, as shown by the very words for left, Latin sinister, French gauche, German linke, meaning bad, wrong, or backwards. Now, I could say this. My little brother was born left-handed, and we forced him to be right-handed. I have no godly understanding as to why, but yes, we did. And right now, I have a twin daughter who's left-handed, and I have not impeded that process on any levels. And when I say we, with my little brother, it definitely was me. I was 6 years old when he was born, but I do remember him being forced to write with his right hand as opposed to his left. And so it makes me wonder now how this affected his psyche, because if left is considered negative or bad and right positive or good, but when we think negative and positive, people always think good or bad, evil, good, et cetera, but nothing could be further than the case. We're talking energetic principles. Negative does not mean bad. It means receptive. Positive doesn't mean good or righteous or holy. It means giving. So I'm off my high horse. Let's move on. Where was I? Says here, witches danced widdershins to the left, made magical gestures with the left hand, and trod on the cross with the left foot. According to their inquisitions, witches ignored the masculine right hand path to the sun and followed the moon's leftward retrograde motion through the heavens. The scepter in the ruler's right hand was based on Shiva's lightning phallus. Which also gave rise to the tarot wand, rod, or club. Originally, the scepter held erect by Shiva had 3 prongs. It was a triple phallus to unite the triple goddess. Shiva, as a sexual god, became known, therefore, as the trident bearer. The same trident was borne by Western phallic gods like Jupiter, Neptune, Hades, Poseidon, Pluto, and Lucifer, the lightning god of the New Testament. The tarot emperor similarly displayed his potency with the 3-pronged scepter, or fleur de lis. We're going to look that symbol up. I want to highlight that. We'll look up the fleur de lis. Now, those who don't know, fleur de lis is the same symbol worn by the New Orleans Saints. I believe it's actually like a cross, or it's been usurped and made into a cross. I've looked that symbol up several times. I don't recall offhand what it means, but I know I've looked it up, especially in Barbara G. Walker's books. It says here, the tarot emperor similarly displayed his potency with 3-pronged scepter, or fleur de lis, sometimes called fleur de luce, flower of light, said to represent a royal marriage, lightning, the male fire element. Mantegna tarot cards showed the emperor as Jupiter himself with his whole figure set within the mandorla, that is, a double-pointed oval sign of the Yoni, which yielded the earliest name of Jupiter's consort, Juno or Uni, mother of the universe. In Christian times, the trident was inherited by the devil. Lucifer was supposed to control lightning in his role of prince of power of the air. Lucifer's lightning figured prominently on the emperor's corresponding card in the spiritual sphere, the house of God, or lightning struck tower, trump number 16. If this card implied a prophecy of the emperor's ultimate fate, traceable to the 14th century prediction of the fall of the Holy Roman Empire, then it may have warned against excessive pride over a high position in the mundane world. This was a common theme throughout the Tarot and throughout Gnosticism generally. The eagle on the emperor's shield signified both his life and his death. According to tradition of Roman Emperor Caesar, whose totem and title both were inherited by Germanic Holy Roman emperors. You know what? Let's do this real quick. The idea just hit me. Let's pull up. Let's pull up Barbara G. Walker's Emperor card. Why not? See if we can get an image of it. Where's her Emperor card? Because I see it in the book, but I would like to, because her Emperor has the fleur de lis. Oh, there he is. Aye. Her Emperor has the fleur de lis, which we now see the significance of that symbol. Here we go. Oh man, it's whack. Let me get out of here. I just want to see the Emperor Moine. Let's do this. Try this one. Save image as B. Walker Tarot. Yep. Save it. Open that file, check it out. Hold this thing up. Sorry for the side job, but I'm just curious. Okay, it's not a real good image, but you can see the fleur de lis in his hand, which is the three prongs, masculine, feminine, and androgyne. He has the hog, his legs across. He has the orb. Oh, I wish I could see it better. I'm going to have to get a copy of her. I'm going to have to get a copy of her. Let me get back to Paul. There we go. Aye. This is why I shouldn't did it. Come out of there. Come out of there. Pictures. Let's pull this image back up. Michael Bell, you did it now. Here. Where's the Emperor Mind? There we go. Back to it. All right. Sorry for the side jaunt. I just want to take a look. I wish I had a better image of her tarot cards, because it's very expressive from how she's describing it. Okay. Let me go back one page. Let's get this last six. It says the eagle and emperor's shield signified both his life and his death. According to the tradition of Roman Emperor Caesar, whose totem and title both were inherited by dramatic Holy Roman emperors, Kaisers. When a dead Caesar was cremated, an eagle was released above the pyre. This was supposed to be his imperial soul, his Ka. I believe in Egypt, that's the Ka, right? This was supposed to be his imperial soul flying to heaven to join his celestial brothers, the gods. Such an imperial apotheosis was the model for the Christian ceremony of canonization, at which a white dove was released to carry the beatified soul to heaven to join the angels. As a totemic form of masculine spirit, the eagle was associated with fire, lightning, and the sun. It was the bird of Jupiter consort, who was made flesh in the emperor. The corresponding imperial bird in Egypt was the Horus hawk, a reincarnated spirit of Osiris. Some old tarot decks showed this hawk on the emperor's card, and one of his alternative names was Osiris. The lightning and bird symbols appearing with the emperor clearly attached him to the traditionally masculine elements, fire and air, whereas the emperor's fertile soil and waterfall equally clearly attached her to the traditionally feminine elements, earth and water. Here and at many other points, Stoic doctrines of the paired elements permeate the tarot. Now, I want to share something real quick. I've said in the previous ones how studying each of these tarot decks has had an impact on my consciousness. And while studying, researching, and meditating on the Emperor card, I was struck with the image of the hawk and the eye. And I'll be honest, at the time, I didn't put much thought into it until just now, because the decks I've seen, there was no association of the hawk with the Emperor card. But now I know this was yet another sign telling me that I'm progressing along the path and I'm making the right connections. The Emperor's crossed legs formed another sign of Jupiter, the oldest heavenly father, wedded to the Earth Mother. Jupiter's sign was similar to the Hermetic Four. To the Hermetic Four, the number of the Emperor's card. The figure was traced as a sign of the cross on the heads and breasts of Hermes worshippers before it was adopted by Christians. Oh, I see why she keeps mentioning Jupiter, because the symbol for Jupiter looks like a number 4. Okay, the figure was traced as a sign of the cross on the heads and breasts of Hermes worshippers before it was adopted by Christians who pretended it referred to Christ's cross. For many centuries previously, however, it had referred to the Hermetic cross, and in Northern Europe to the cross of Wotan. Wotan being Odin, Wednesday Day. The emperor's crossed legs also recalled the Mithraic torchbearers of the son of morning with his legs crossed in one direction, the son of evening with his legs crossed in the other direction. Formation of a cross with the legs was a crucial cross-like piece of tarot symbolism, repeated on the card of the hangman. encountering his death, and again on the card of the world, who appeared as the Lady of Life or reincarnation. Connection of the Emperor card of the Emperor with cards of cyclic destruction and rebirth hinted at a recurrent Gnostic message. The material success and pride brought karmic retribution in the form of a fall. The Emperor enthroned was a god in his glory, securely wedded to the Empress who embraced his eagle shield, making him the husband of his land. Yet there were the usual indications that his potency would fail and his day of glory would end. Like the hangman, he would face obliteration. Some tarot decks showed the emperor sitting before a vista of barren mountains. A flight of carrion crows suggested his inevitable end. Now I understand these bare-ass mountains in the background. Because Father Time is always preceded by a baby, right? The masculine reign will always be short. You look now, I guess that's symbolic of the United States president serving 4 years and the fact that he's vilified during his term and then essentially is dead after his term. Where we at? Okay, it says a flight of carrion crows suggesting that his inevitable end. So did his corresponding card, the lightning-struck phallic tower called House of God, trunk number 16. Sometimes the proud tower was taken as a description of the Holy Roman Empire. An alternate title of the emperor was Guardian of the Holy Grail. This meant the lame Fisher King of the Grail cycle, to whom Wolfram von Eisenbach gave the name and Fortas. At first, the king's battle cry was Amor, love. In the conflict between Christianity and paganism, he was emasculated, and Amor ceased to guide him. Like the rest of the world, he was left waiting for the desired knight to bring him salvation. And who was the desired knight? According to the earliest versions of the Grail mythology, it would be the initiate himself. Peredur of Percival, who began his mystic journey as the fool, and after many trials and dangers, won the world. Like the empress, the emperor was divested of his imperial title in post-revolutionary France and renamed the Godfather, but he soon reverted to his original title, as tarot interpreters continued to view him as a symbol of secular power. That was awesome. Now, let's see. We're going to go through these. I'm going to go next to, let's get the title in there. Z's Easy Tarot by Zsuzsanna E. Budapest. She spells Zsuzsanna with a Z in front. Zsuzsanna E. Budapest. Budapest. Real small book, very simple. Got it at a flea market, I believe, for like $1. So I'm gonna definitely work it out. So what she says about the emperor: preoccupation with power and where power comes from, how to attain it, and how to use it. The type of power this card represents, if matriarchal power, is a blending of spirituality with action. People who get this card are attracted to going back to school, getting diplomas, getting into public life, running for office, etc., etc. We're going to go to Teach Yourself to Roll the Quick and Easy Way by Philip Cooper, who is definitely a very respectable author. And what he has to say about the emperor is thus. The emperor, 4, synopsis: a wise man, a great person, the powerful man who will help. General description: the emperor holds a scepter and an orb in his hands. He is seated on a throne, the arms of which are embellished with ram's heads. He's going off the Rider-Waite deck. Loved and respected, he rules with great wisdom and benevolence. ready to help and guide his people. He has the qualities of King Solomon, and is a man amongst men. And then he goes on to say, reading on major arcana cards alone is not to be recommended. They represent important points in the life's journey, and therefore one is unable to supply specific details in such a reading. One has to turn to the minor arcana for the additional information, which enables a vague general consultation of the cards to become a spot-on, accurate, personalized advisory service. Practice with three cards at a time. Alternate between reading for answers to direct questions. For example, will I master the tarot cards? Once the three cards have been interpreted, it is an excellent idea to alter the positions so that the second card is put in the place of the first position, and then once again, so that the third card becomes the first. See examples in figures 3 and 4. So he's just showing different ways to arrange your cards for accurate readings. Using just these three cards, it is possible to obtain the following answer. The three cards he has is the High Priestess, the Emperor, and the Magician. And he says, first card, number 2, the High Priestess. Use your intuition and psychic power. Second card, the Magician. It is your power to make whatever you want happen. You have the ability to succeed. The third card, which is the Emperor, a wise man will help you. Figure 4, the three cards, he put them in alternate positions with the Magician in the first place, and then the Emperor in the third place. No, High Priestess in the first. Okay, I'm sorry. Magician in the first, Emperor in the second, High Priestess in the third position. And so what he goes on to say is, for the first card, 1, the Magician, you know that you have a lot of power and usually succeed at whatever you attempt. Second card, 4, the Emperor, you are an extremely wise person that could use your wisdom to help others. If this reading is for a woman, it means that a wise man is currently helping and guiding her. And then the third card, which is the High Priestess, if you learn to trust your own intuition, it will become stronger. You have the ability to become very good at reading the tarot. The next six major arcana cards are the Hierophant, the Lovers, the Chariot, Strength, the Hermit, the Wheel of Fortune. Each card should be removed from the deck and considered carefully. It is a valuable exercise to have a pen and paper to write down any impressions formed about each of the cards until the meanings have been memorized. It is impossible to allow intuition to make a really positive contribution to the interpretation. Now, I'll say that you want to move beyond memorization, but still, I like this concept he's given of rearranging the cards of your reading, because that's something I do with my dreams. I don't allow, I give at least 3 different decodes to every dream to make sure that I'm getting the right message. So I can rock with that. And at some point, I'm going to dedicate some study just to Philip Cooper's book. This next one is The Pictorial Key to the Tarot, Arthur Edward Waite. Get it in there so you can see a good image of it. I can't really see it. But yeah. So let's see what he has to say about the Emperor. So remember, that's his card to the far left. And what he says is the Emperor. He has a form of the crux ansata. We're going to look that up too. We'll look at the fleur de lis and the crux ansata. They're both images of the cross, I believe. Crux ansata is the Ankh. He has a form of the crux ansata for a scepter and a globe in his left hand. He is a crowned monarch, commanding, stately, seated on a throne, the arms of which axe fronted by ram's heads. the arms of which are from it's a typo. It says here, he is a crown monarch, commanding stately, seated on the throne, the arms of which are fronted by ram's heads. It says here axe. So I'm going to write in or, so the next time I read this, I won't stumble. Are fronted by ram's heads. We see all the rams. We see the two behind them and the two on the armrest. Oh, excuse me. He is executive and realization. He is executive. I'm not going to say executive. Executive and realization, the power of this world. Here clothed with the highest of its natural attributes, he is occasionally represented as seated on a cubic stone, which is what Paul Foster did in his Bolted. He is the virile power to which the empress responds, and in this sense is he who seeks to remove the veil of vices, yet she remains Virgo intacta, her virginity intact. He's not piercing the veil, but he's doing his best to do so. It should be understood that this card and that of the empress do not precisely represent the condition of married life. Where was I at? It should be understood that this card and that of the empress do not precisely represent the condition of married life, though this state is implied. On the surface, as I've indicated, they stand for mundane royalty uplifted on the seats of the mighty. But above this, there's the suggestion of another presence. They signify also, in the male figure especially, the higher kingship occupying the intellectual throne. Hereof is the lordship of thought rather than of the animal world. Both personalities, after their own manner, are full of strange experience, but theirs is not consciously the wisdom which draws from a higher world. The emperor has been described as a will in its embodied form, but this is only one of its applications, and B, as the expression of virtualities contained in the absolute being, but this is fantasy. Again, he's real brief. You know what I don't see? I don't see my Paul Foster case book. Bear with me while I go get it. Matter of fact, let me pause it. I'm going to go get Paul Foster case. Let's pause recording. I'll be right back. We're going to get to Paul Foster. All right, let's get back to it. Apologize for the slight delay. All right. So we're going to dive into now. Man, I hate this glare. Is Paul Foster case, the Tarot, a key to wisdom, a key to the wisdom of the ages. We're going to see what he has to say about the emperor. Key 4, the emperor, hey. Hey, H as in honor, or E, value 5. It's pronounced hey. It means window, literally wind door. A window admits light, knowledge, and air, life, breath, spirit into the house, Beth, of personality. It also permits outlook, survey, supervision, control, and so on. Architecturally, windows are derived from doors. Furthermore, since they permit a survey of persons approaching the house, they enable the inhabitants of the house to decide whether to open the door to admit friends or to bar it against enemies. The eyes of windows and soul, right? The most important thing about a window is transparency, and this takes us back to the mode of consciousness attributed to the magician. Sight is the sense function attributed by Kabbalists to the letter He. Vision, inspection, recognizance, watchfulness, care, vigilance, examination, calculation, analysis, induction, inquiry, investigation, and the like. All are all associated in language. All depend largely on the sense of sight. Thus, we may expect to find the mode of consciousness associated with this letter, one which is active in this kind of mental operation. Constituting intelligence is the name given in the Hebrew wisdom, and it is said to constitute creation in the darkness of the world. To constitute is to make anything what it is, to frame, to compose. Constitution is closely related to authorship. The author of anything is its producer, originator, inventor, founder, begetter, generator, architect, and builder. Authorship is therefore closely connected in our thought with paternity. The paternal authority depends on the fact that the father is head and founder of the family. In this connection, it is interesting to find that the letter He is employed in Hebrew precisely as we use the English definite article the or the. The constituting intelligence is the defining consciousness. This shows us, first of all, that the constituting intelligence must be a variant of self-consciousness, mental activity, because to define anything is to name it, and we have already associated self-consciousness with Adam, the namer. Definition, moreover, limits, set boundaries, circumscribes. It specializes, particularizes, enters into detail, makes distinctions. The qualities thus indicated are precisely those which enter into the making of a constitution of any form of society, and that constitution is the basic law and supreme authority for its particular social organization. Thus, the letter He as a definite article implies regulation, order, law, and all related ideas. Laws are definitions, and it should always be borne in mind that what we call laws of nature are simply definitions or descriptions of a sequence of events in some particular field of human observation. What is even more important for the occultists and the psychologists is that our personal definitions of the meaning of our experiences constitute suggestions which are accepted without reservation by our subconsciousness. Thus, in a sense, every man makes his own law, writes the constitution of his own personal world, and finds that his life experience is the reproduction of that constitution through the working of subconscious responses. He is the first of the 12 simple letters of the Hebrew alphabet, so called because each has but a single pronunciation. To it is attributed the first sign of the zodiac, Aries, the ram. Aries is a fiery cardinal sign. It governs the head and face. It is ruled by Mars, significant of force, strength, energy, courage, and activity. Mars rules iron, steel, surgery, chemistry, and military affairs. In Aries, the sun is exalted or raised to its highest level of power. The sun has to do with health and vitality. It is significant. It is the significator of high office and of positions of rank and title, so that it represents rulership and authority. It also stands for the ego or individuality in one's natal horoscope. Its metal is gold. It brings to mind for me the point within a circle, which represents the sun and gold. And that is known as a circumpunct. Circumpunct, CIRCUMPUNCT. Aries is a scientific and philosophical sign, and this agrees with what has been said concerning the constituting intelligence, inasmuch as both science and philosophy have accurate definition as their basis. Astrologers say Aries represents rulership, government, guidance, and leadership. The color corresponding to Aries is scarlet. The musical tone is C natural. Northeast is a direction attributed to He. So it's the rising sun, or the place of instruction. because north is considered darkness, east is considered light. So that will place it at the boundary line between ignorance and knowing. These directions are given in the Book of Formation and have to do with a very important esoteric teaching in which the manifested universe is represented as a cube shown in occult diagrams with its western and southern faces visible to the observer. See the accompanying illustration. Oh, I did download that. I was ready for this. Where is the cube? Here it is. So let's enlarge it a bit. Bring it. Okay, so you can take a look at this while we continue reading. This is the cube of space. The 6 faces of this cube and its interior center are assigned to the 7 double letters of the alphabet. The 3 interior coordinates correspond to the 3 mother letters. The 12 boundary lines represent the 12 simple letters. Thus, the letters already considered, Aleph corresponds to the line corresponding. Thus, the letters already considered, Aleph corresponds to the line extending inside the cube from the center of the upper face to the center of the bottom face, so that it is representative of pure spirit, super consciousness, as the link between the superior and inferior manifestations of life. So that makes sense. And so if you look this northeast corner of the cube in the far back, you see the number 4, which is the Emperor card. And so this is indicative of the northeast and this constituting intelligence. The letter Bet, corresponding to the direction above, is assigned to the upper face of the cube, which you see the magician right there at the upper face of the cube. Gimel corresponds to the direction below, is assigned to the lower face. We see Gimel down there below. Now Gimel, which is camel, most don't know that a camel is actually a desert serpent. So Gimel actually represents also Kundalini. So I think that's an important connection to make also. This cube of space is very interesting. So just while I'm reading, if you're looking, focus on that and see what comes to mind. Because I'm looking now and I see all kinds of things. So let me go back. It says here, Gimel corresponding to the direction below is assigned to the lower face. Daleth, corresponding to the direction east, is the rear face. Of the cube, shown in the accompanying diagram. The letter He, which we are now considering, is assigned to the vertical edge of the cube, which is the point of junction between the eastern and northern faces, connecting the northeast upper corner with the northeast lower corner. No more than hints of this cube symbolism can be given in this introductory text, but we have thought best to include the figure of the cube of space, since careful study will reveal to discerning readers many clues to a deeper understanding of the tarot system. A lot of these images you have to meditate on. And again, this is something that we discussed in terms of, let me put my phone on silent. This is one of the things we've discussed in terms of things being considered profane or not for the uninitiated. And these initiations, they come from within. Now you can join an organization and pursue it that route, but no organization can confer any actual higher consciousness on you. That's your job to do. In any organization or society or whatever, Golden Dawn, Masonic, whatever, Rosicrucian, voodoo, any society you may join, it is only symbolic. It is up to you to do the work. In Tarot, the direction north through the letter P corresponds to key 16, analyzed in chapter 20. And east is, as we have said, represented in Tarot by key 3, the Empress. Later on, it will be evident that the constituting intelligence combines the imagination and generation of ideas associated with the Empress with the destruction of structures of error, symbolized in Tarot by the lightning-struck tower. And now, if you remember, Barbara G. Walker made this same connection at least twice, where she compared the Emperor to the number 16 card. So just keep that in mind if you're a beginner. To the advanced that might be listening, please tap in and share what you know. I'm just saying this to those who may be in the process of learning and making these connections. That is something that struck me while I was reading it, that she mentioned it 2 or 3 times, the connection between the Emperor card and the number 16 card, the destruction of the tower. So we know that it's critical. Accurate definition requires clear imagery, Empress, and its application and action is always destructive to error, tower. Note, furthermore, that the direction north is associated with Mars, the ruler of Aries, and the direction east is associated with Venus. The title 4 card, the Emperor, means he who sets in order. And from what has been said, it will be seen to be peculiarly applicable to this picture. It implies both authority and paternity. It also represents the head of government, the source of war, the war-making power, and so on. These ideas are related to the sign Aries and to Mars, the sun. They are ideas, moreover, which are in close correspondence to the meanings of the number 4 given in chapter 2. Now, what I'm going to do real quick, I want to go back. You see that the background of the Emperor card, more so in the Paul Foster Case card on the right, the Bolta card, we see those red mountains. That is indicative of the planet Mars. That's something that we see in almost everyday visualization whenever NASA shows us an image of Mars. It's that red clay, that red dirt. I want to go back to chapter 2 to read what he says about the number 4. Let's do that real quick. Let's read that just to tie it in. Can't hurt. I got so many sticky notes in this book. This is chapter 3. I want chapter 2. So here we go with 4. Now, if you were following me, you remember that he had the diagram with the numbers. So it says here, 4, the figure starts with the vertical line. We'll skip all of that. 4, it says, from these considerations are derived the following meanings of 4. No, let me read it all. You'd have to go back. I know I have it in here. Let me see if I can find it. Here. This is the key of cosmic numbers. So here he says this figure starts with the vertical line of figure 1, A to B. You see that right there, A to B. Adds 2 other lines, A to G, which is going down right there at that angle, and then G to H. Thus drawn, 4 shows in its upper portion a triangle, symbol of the number 3, and in its lower portion a T square, a geometrical symbol of 4 itself. Triangle and T-square are among the most important instruments of the draftsman. We're talking masonry here. They have occult reference to the esoteric side of geometry. They suggest planning, surveying, topography, and the like. From these considerations are derived the following meanings of 4: order, measurement, classification, recording, tabulation, and so on. Because of these meanings, Kabbalists make 4 the number of memory. Now, memory is actually a feminine aspect, even though it's been attributed to the emperor. Memory is feminine. It is an aspect of Isis because Isis remembered Osiris. Because the life power's perfect memory of its own potencies and of the needs of even the least of its centers of expression cannot be supposed to fail, the idea of beneficence, good givingness, is assigned to 4. The beneficence is not wasteful prodigality. All the gifts of the life power are measured out. Every center of expression receives exactly what is coming to it always. Therefore, the number 4 is called the measuring intelligence. Let's get back to it. The orange background in the upper part of the picture refers to the exaltation of the sun in Aries. So let's get back to this. The orange background is indicative of Aries because orange is the color of key 19, the sun, whose metal is gold. Below it are red mountains of igneous rock, both in form and color. These refer to the fiery qualities of Aries. Red is also the color of the sign and of Mars, its ruler. These mountains in the distance are forbidding heights, in sharp contrast to the valley where the emperor sits. Barren, they represent vividly the sterility of mere supervision and regulation, unless there be something vitally warm and fruitful to set in order. I think that that's a powerful statement to say that rulership in and of itself is actually infertile, it's barren. What was on the other hand, it is the erosion of these barren rocks which provides the soil for the empress's garden. So we know about soil erosion, and we see that river flowing through. So even though it's barren rock, it provides the seed for future growth and fruition. On the emperor's shoulder is a ram's head, and another is shown on the southern face of the cube whereon he sits. Thus, the second ram's head, combined with the face of the cube, corresponds to the south and the sun, and suggests the exaltation of the sun in Aries. Another intimation that this key represents Aries is the astrological symbol of the sign, shown as an ornament at the top of the emperor's helmet-like crown. Now, we can't see it too good, but it has the Aries symbol on both. If you have the card, you can look at it. It's not too clear on the card either, but it's the symbol of Aries, the ram, which is like a V, curling like the ram's horns. The monarch sits on a cubic stone, like that which is the seat of the high priestess. This indicates that the mode of consciousness here symbolized has its seat or basis in laws of cosmic manifestation, which are at work in the mineral kingdom. A very few laws suffice for all the complex manifestations of the life power, and they are operative on low planes as well as on high. The metal parts of the emperor's helmet-like crown are of gold, a further reference to the exaltation of the sun in Aries. The shape of the crown suggests the conventional helmet of Mars, ruler of Aries. Underneath the crown is a red cap, the color of which refers both to Mars and Aries. The composition of the emperor's figure deserves special mention. It is so drawn that the right hand of the left elbow and the top of the head form the points of an equilateral triangle, while the legs suggest a cross. The right, let me go back. It is so drawn that the right hand and the left elbow, boop, boop. Oh, he forms a triangle. Okay. So the triangle represents fire. Fire is indicative of light. And transversely can be applied to air, but fire is considered more upward mobile as opposed to light or air, I mean. This is the alchemical symbol for the fiery alchemical principle, sulfur. Oh, because sulfur is a symbol of a triangle with the cross in the center, I believe. This is the alchemical symbol for the fiery alchemical principle, sulfur, closely akin to the rajas or Agni Tattva of yoga philosophy, and therefore related to the elements of fire predominant in the sign Aries or Shiva. The emperor is clad in steel armor. This further emphasizes his correspondence to the martial sign Aries, because iron and steel are the metals of Mars. The ornamental flaps of his garment are purple. This is the color of royalty. It has reference also to the planet Jupiter, represented in Tarot by the Wheel of Fortune, because there is an occult relationship between 4, the number of the emperor, and 10, the number of the Wheel of Fortune. We shall recur to this when we have come to key 10. The yellow or gold scepter of the emperor's right hand is a modified symbol, Venus symbol, another reference to the exaltation of the sun in Aries. Let me highlight that. Excuse me. It is 3:33. That's a good time. It's 3:33 a.m. in California right now. We're going to get this work, though. That's what we're going to do. We're going to get this work. The scepter is also a form of the Egyptian Ankh. So that's 3 things we're going to look up. The fleur-de-lis, the Egyptian Ankh, and the crux ansata. The crux ansata is just the Christian name for the Ankh. But we're going to look that up just to hammer in this relation of, because it's also a stylized symbol of the planet Venus. So even though he's holding it in his right hand, which is masculine, he has clearly a feminine symbol, because we know that the Ankh has been pointed out time and time again on social media, Facebook. The Ankh is actually can be a correspondence to the feminine reproductive organs, to the yoni. So he's holding in his masculine right hand a symbol of authority, which is the crux ansata, the fleur-de-lis, or the Ankh, or an elongated symbol of Venus, which could be a mastery over his feminine aspect, because he is looking towards the feminine. And in his right hand, he holds an orb, which is indicative of the Mother Earth. And something I've noticed, even though I know we're only on card 4, the tarot is predominantly feminine. And that's something that Barbara G. Walker touched on, you know. The Fool is essentially androgynous. The Magician, while masculine, his card is not clear-cut masculine, you know, but still he is the Magician is considered a male. But then we go from the Magician to the High Priestess, from the High Priestess to the Empress, and then from the Empress to the Emperor. We see the Emperor, although he's clearly male, he has the beard, he has a lot of feminine symbology going on. So, okay, let's see. The scepter is also one form of the Egyptian Ankh, or sign of life. It means that the power of regulation is chiefly derived from the exaltation of solar energy and the sense of sight, and in the mental vision, which is the inner correspondence thereto. The globe in the monarch's left hand is the conventional symbol of dominion. It is red, color of Mars, and on it is an inverted gold T square. The square is a symbol of the use of mathematics and geometry and planning. Because it is shaped like a letter T, it is the correspondence with Tav, the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, to which the planet Saturn is assigned. What this hints is that the order and dominion exercised by the emperor brings about an inversion or reversal of the Saturn powers of limitation. Right definition is itself a sort of limitation, which sets us free from slavery to circumstances because it enables us through the right knowledge to establish new boundaries to enlarge our horizon. That's a powerful statement. We can find ourselves restricted or limited by a lack of knowledge, but Saturn is Mars and Saturn have these negative connotations, but that's more of a Western way of thinking, because Mars is adversarial in the instance that Mars is going to be fighting on your side. So Mars is like your helper, not your harmer. You know, he's there to help you and to defend you if you're right. And if you're wrong, you can expect Mars to give you a proper pizzazz buffet, to get in your face and tell you exactly what you need to be doing, stop doing this and that. And the same thing with Saturn and its supposed constrictions. Saturn, which is the Capricorn or no cap, right? A capping. There's just so many references to Capricorn. Capricorn is actually a very powerful symbol of as above, so below, because on the above aspect, we have the horned goat. Below, we have the fish. The goat on high represents the conscious mind. The fish represents the subconscious mind. So let's do it. Oh, sorry, y'all. I apologize for yawning like that. We still got a bunch of books to go through. But once we get through this book and then the Robert Wang, everything else would be kind of downhill. So it's all good. I'm not sure if I'm going to break out the mystical Kabbalah Dion Fortune. So I'm going to set it back here. If I do decide to go to it, I'll go to it. Okay. Get more water. I got a water back here. I hear my daughter's in the room. It's summertime, so I'm gonna give them a pass. It's 3:40 in the morning, and they in there singing and jumping on beds. But it's summertime. Do it big, kid. All right, let's do it. I can leave this right here. It's not in the way. So the emperor is an old man with a white beard, shown in profile. This is one of the marked divergence from the writer Pack, which shows him full face. Dr. Waite registers his opinion that nothing particular signifies from showing the emperor in profile, yet none of the old exoteric packs of the Tarot show him in full face, nor does the unpublished esoteric version. The more recondite reasons for preferring the profile, which shows only the left eye of the monarch, have deep roots in the Cabalistic philosophy and symbolism, but they go far beyond the scope of present value. So we're going to look that up too. The different crosses as well as the left eye. We're going to look at left and left eye. We're going to have to do that. Enough to say that the present writer has been instructed in this Kabbalistic tradition and thinks it of sufficient importance to retain the older symbolism. For that matter, Dr. Waite had the same occult instruction and must have known that the key for his place on the Kabbalistic tree of life through its connection with the letter He makes the use of the profile symbolism by which Kabbalists invariably represented the Ancient of Days, particularly imperative for any representative of the emperor. So again, I stated initially, Arthur Waite, he put occult blinds in there. He would throw you off the trail. So unless you did your due diligence, you would never know that you were heading in the wrong direction. The emperor is obviously the consort of the empress. He is in fact essentially identical with the magician after the latter's union with the high priestess. So we see that as the tarot moves up, I didn't read it in the book, I'm going to stop that thought, but as the tarot moves up, we see it combining. And Barbara G. Walker, in her book on the tarot, she pointed out that if you add 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 + 5 + 6 + 7 + 8 + 9 + 10 + 11 + 12, you come up with 78. So there is a merging, because this is all describing the fool's journey, not journeys, but the fool's journey. So we see it combining. The emperor is actually a representation of the magician after his union with the high priestess. And so you can assume that the empress and emperor will produce the following card, which is the Hierophant. Okay, the emperor is obviously the consort of the empress. He is in fact essentially identical with the magician after the latter's union with the high priestess has transformed her into the empress and has made him the father of her children. It is on this account that the emperor follows the empress in the series. As the magician, he is only potentially a father, just as the high priestess is only potentially a mother. After his consort has borne him children, the emperor has opportunity for actual exercise of his parental authority. Now, I'll be honest, as I was reading that, I stumbled because in my mind, I said, these are brainchilds. These are mental children. Yeah. In the sense that the emperor represents the grand architect of the universe, the Ancient of Days, he is a supreme nous, N-O-U-S, or reason, the constituting power alike of the great world and of all the little, and of the little, of the great world and of the little, of the universe and of man. Let me see what. I'm going to stop saying I'm going to wait. I want to look up these things while I'm reading it. What I want to look up first is the Ancient of Days. I don't think I have. I don't think this mentioned any of my books on symbology. I only have a couple out here, so I won't put too much hope. I believe the Ancient of Days is the demiurge. You know what? Okay, I won't look up Ancient of Days. Let's keep it like we've been doing. But I believe the Ancient of Days is a demiurge. Psychologically, therefore, he represents the self-consciousness of man when his activities are engaged in the work of inductive reasoning, whereby errors arising from superficial interpretation of experience are overthrown. He is the definer, the lawgiver, The regulator. He is the ruling mental activity in human personality. He frames the constitution of your personal world. Paul Foster Case is by far one of my favorite authors on Tarot at this point. Some are a little too simple, others are a little too vague, but I like the connections that he makes. So what I'm going to go to next is let's check out Manly P. Hall's The Secret Teachings of All Ages. Now, what I got going on dopely with Manly P. Hall, I'm currently back working with Ganesh. And I'm using this as a kind of like a bookmark or a reminder to keep Ganesh on the forefront of my mind. And since I'm saying that, I'm going to go into the Om Ganapataye Namaha. Give it up to the remover obstacles real quick. You heard me? All right. Let's see what Manly has to say about the Emperor. Let's see. Okay, here we go. This third card. We find ourselves. The fourth numbered major trump is called l'Empereur, the emperor. By its numerical value, is directly associated with the great deity revered by Pythagoreans under the form of the tetrad. See, he's talking about the Ancient of Days, Yahweh, Demiurge. His symbols declare the emperor to be the Demiurgus, the great king of the inferior world. The emperor is dressed in armor, and his throne is a cube stone, upon which a phoenix is also clearly visible. Not on this deck. The king has his legs crossed in a most significant manner and carries either a scepter surmounted by an orb or a scepter in his right hand and an orb in his left. The orb itself is evident that he is supreme ruler of the world. Upon his right and left breast, respectively, appear the symbols of the sun and moon. It's not on this one either, which in symbolism. What's up? Where was I at? Upon his right and left breast, respectively, appear the symbols of the sun and moon, which in symbolism are referred to as the eyes of the great king. The position of the body and legs forms the symbol of sulfur. Yeah, we talked about that in Paul Foster Case's book, The Sign of the Ancient Alchemical Monarch. The pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the figure is in profile. He wears a Masonic apron, and the skirt forms a right-angled triangle. Upon his head is the crown of the north, and his forehead is adorned with the coiled uraeus. It's not on either one of these in terms of uraeus, but I can see how it would be implied. Then from here, let's shoot over to, now after we go through these books discussing these cards, we're going to break down some of the symbology, especially the symbology that we see on the card. Thus far, we have the crux on the side of the fleur de lis, the ankh, the ram, of course, Mars left, things like that. Those are key points that you want to either jot down, keep in mind, and research for yourself, because you can definitely go deeper than what I'm doing right here. So the Emperor, which is the fourth card of the major arcana. That's the High Priestess. This is the Empress. Adelle. So let's get to the Path of Hay. The Emperor, the fourth key, path color scarlet, related sound, see natural. Oh, and before I go any further, this is Robert Wayne's The Cabalistic Tarot, a textbook of mystical philosophy. meaning window, simple letters, sight, esoteric title, son of the morning, chief among the mighty. 32 paths of wisdom. The 15th path is the constituting intelligence. So the emperor represents the 15th path, which is the path from Hokmah to Tifereth. Yeah, from Hokmah to Tifereth. The 15th path is the constituting intelligence, so-called because it constitutes the substance of creation in pure darkness. Again, we see sight is involved. You can't create in pure. Well, mankind can't create in pure darkness, but divinity sure can, as well as the divine feminine, because she creates a whole human being in darkness. But it still implies sight, even if it's an inner sight, right? So the 15th path is the constituting intelligence, so-called because it constitutes the substance of creation in pure darkness, and men have spoken of these contemplations. It is that darkness spoken of in scripture, Job 38 verse 9, and thick darkness, a swaddling band for it. And let's see what Robert Wayne said about the Emperor card. The higher we rise in the tree of life, the more obvious it becomes that the tarot trumps only point the way towards concepts which the mind cannot otherwise grasp. Until the present day, this was a great deal more difficult because the language of psychology did not exist. Our terms such as conscious, subconscious, and unconscious are extremely useful tools because they can conceptualize something inordinately fluid. Now, I want to point something out, totally unrelated to the topic at hand, but I did realize that Robert Wayne, while discussing the topic of tarot, he essentially wrote his book from right to left. Even though we read it in America, we're going to read it from left to right, but the number tarot you'll find in descending order from left to right. But if you read from right to left, it will be in ascending order with the Fool at 0. So I thought that was pretty dope. As I think he did that kind of tongue in cheek, kind of like a moo-hoo-ha-ha. And only those in the know would know and recognize it. So I thought that was pretty dope. Thus, in our present state of development, we easily deal with shades of consciousness within ourselves. We are coming closer and closer to an ability to deal with formlessness, pure consciousness. This is the promise of the so-called age of Aquarius. And I can agree with that as well, that there's beginning to be, there's signs of showing of the ability to contemplate nothingness, formlessness. I mean, these are ancient concepts in the East, but in the West, nothing meant nothing, zero, the lack of, a negation, and nothing could be further from the truth. Although it is rarely stated in such terms. Let me go back and read that sentence because I just stopped. We are coming closer and closer to an ability to deal with formlessness, pure consciousness. This is the promise of the so-called age of Aquarius, although it is rarely stated in such terms. The student who begins to understand the next 5 tarot trumps, the emperor, the empress, the high priest, the magician, the fool, will have taken a long step into that new age. To this end, it must be emphatically related that the entire tarot deck reflects the universe, which is made up of permutations of the one. From the one emerges opposites down. In this instance, when he speaks of the one, we know he's speaking of deity, but he's speaking of Kether. Kether emerged from triple stages of darkness, Ein Sof, and then from emerging from that, Kether duplicated itself, or a reflection emerged which is Hokmah, and then on and on and on, Cabalistically speaking. Where was I at? To this end, it must be emphatically related that the entire tarot deck reflects the universe, which is made up of permutations of the one. From the one emerges opposites, which are activating and formative, male and female. It is accurate to say that all male and female figures in the tarot are Hokmah. All male and female in the tarot are Hokmah and Binah, wearing the robes of different planes, actually levels of vibratory rate of the universe. So that is actually powerful when you think of, I said earlier that the tarot deck seems predominantly feminine up to this point, but we see that they're all a reflection of Hokmah and Binah, which are respectively, I guess, female and male, I believe. Let me be correct. Hokmah is masculine and Binah is feminine. Whew. All right, let's do it. It's 3:57. Good time in the kingdom, good time. Says here, the fool is the one God energy. The magician and the high priestess are the first differentiation into masculine and feminine within the macrocosm and the microcosm. These are the personal subjective energies of the macrocosm and the microcosm. These are the personal subjective energies of the paths as opposed to the objective universal energies of the Sephiroth. So the paths in between the Sephiroths are subjective, and the Sephiroth themselves are objective. So that makes excellent sense. What you up to? Yeah, what you doing? Are you doing something?
No, I'm not eating.
You eating?
Yeah.
What do you eat?
Sandwich. I think it's in the bag.
Where you get it from?
I made it.
Why is it in a plastic bag?
I finished it. It's in the bag.
So it didn't come from the store, you made it and put it in a store-bought bag?
No, I made it and it was trash in the bag, so put the trash in this person third way.
You put your good sandwich into a
I
trash
finished
bag?
I finished the sandwich and put the foil on the sandwich in the bag.
Okay, true that, slay.
Sorry.
Where was I at? The Cabalistic principle is that the magician is the consort of the high priestess. Considered psychologically, we know that the magician stands for the will, while the high priestess, the root of water, is the pure unconscious. So to describe the magician as the mate of the high priestess refers to the activity of directing will of the one on the great ocean of undifferentiated consciousness, which it has itself projected. In the Kabbalah, we are always dealing with reflexive qualities. God creates thought, then creates mind to hold that thought. Everything has to do with the perception and activity of the divine spirit on itself, a process which various systems of symbols attempt to suggest, and which is what the tarot does. As we described in Considering the Wheel of Fortune, the alchemist spoke of the divine self-interaction in terms of sulfur, salt, and mercury. We're talking alchemy here. These terms may also be applied to the upper level cards of the tarot. The magician is mercury. The empress is salt. The emperor is sulfur. Crowley has gone so far as to position his emperor so that the body forms a triangle and cross, symbol of alchemical sulfur, which we see in Paul Foster Case's card also. Scratch my back, man. The magician Philosophic Mercury acts upon the high priestess, pure consciousness, and they are, by their union, transformed into the emperor and the empress, sulfur and salt. Of course, all of this may seem little more than an obscure abstraction, a bending of words. It's going down out there. Yellow bird overhead. Where was I at? The magician, philosophic Mercury, acts upon the high priestess, pure consciousness, and they are, by their union, transformed into the emperor and the empress, sulfur and salt. Of course, all of this may seem little more than an obscure abstraction, a bending of words almost for their own sake. But when we consider these principles as aspects of our own consciousness, they are quite basic. When we close our eyes and allow free-form images to float by us, taking whatever direction they will, we are tapping into the life energy ruled by the Empress. When we begin to think about what is happening before our eyes and classifying the images according to color, subject, or any other criterion, we are calling the Emperor into play. We are acting upon form. This is another of those cards where Paul Case brought exceptional insight to bear as he explained why the emperor is on the path below the empress. He says, because she is the manifesting power which brings form into being, he has something to rule. So I mentioned earlier that the marriage or the mating between the empress and the emperor, these are psychological concepts. These are brain childs. Now, once you have a child, father being the ogre, he can rule over his children, correct? But these are your thoughts. These are the discipline you apply to your mind. So that's the only way I can accept it. Because we just discussed in Barbara G. Walker's books that once people got a hold of tarot, they were unfit to be ruled. So these are all psychological concepts. The mating and the pairing of these opposites giving birth to children, and these children now become subjects of the father. These are formlessness taking form and then giving function. It was Paul Foster Case who mentioned Adam in connection with the emperor. Adam being the namer. Adam gave, he assigned name, nature, and function to all things. So maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not, but I got it out. Let me start over. This is another of those cards where Paul Case brought exceptional insight to bear as he explained why the emperor is on the path below the empress. He says, because she is the manifesting power which brings form into being, he has something to rule. The magician who appears now as the emperor would have nothing to control or transform, did not subconscious send up from its depths a stream of images to be classified by the exercise of reason. So that's what I just said. These are brainchild. This is you getting to know thyself. It should be obvious that there is a certain crossover of Yod and He, Yod, He, Vav, He energies. The Empress is the balance between Chokmah and Binah. She is the growth which comes from the interaction of the male and female, as in the fertilized cell. She is pure fruition. The Emperor, on the other hand, while a potent masculine energy, is He on the paths, meaning that its function is determined by Binah. This is a formative path, and its activities are rational and classified, as is underscored by its bright red color, that of Binah, the world of pure spirit, absolute. The lower we descend on the tree of life, the more the male and female energies are interwoven. And by this reasoning, one might assume that the only pure male and female in the universe are at the level of Chokmah and Binah, which is unfortunately not the case. I was about to say, if that's the case, then everybody's mad about these gender fluidities for nothing, but Robert Wang says that's not the case. Having come to the level of the supernal paths, it is necessary to introduce an idea which may be perceived as destructive to the entire tower of male-female principles so neatly established to this point. And you see, we've just read like 4 different books that reference the tower card in correspondence and in relation to the emperor. But you see how Wait, he just puts up a complete blind. Either he won't say something or he'll send you in the wrong direction. Paul Foster Case is going to set those connections out for you. And then at a certain point, he's going to say, well, hey, I can't tell you no more. You got to figure out the rest for yourself. Barbara G. Walker is even more blunt, where she draws connections. She shows the connections, but she doesn't explain the connections. Now, here it is, Robert Wayne. We already have established that the Emperor card is connected to the number 16 card, which is the tower. And Robert Wayne, just so subtly, he says, having come to the level of the supernal paths, it is necessary to introduce an idea which may be perceived as destructive to the entire tower of male and female principles so neatly established to this point. So the connection between the emperor and the tower card, this destruction is destroying the illusion of masculine and feminine being these two polarized opposites. The Kabbalion tells us that like and unlike are actually the same. So we see this connection, and that's why it's important to have different books, because you get these crumbs and these clues dropped, and you can begin to make these connections. It should be obvious that there is a certain, okay, wait, I read that already. So what he says is, let us state the problem abruptly. Chokmah, wisdom, meaning the primary quality of maleness, is a female noun. See, that's what always got me, is that knowledge, wisdom, understanding, you hear it spoken of as father, mother, child. But here we find out that in Hebrew, wisdom is masculine with the feminine, but feminine, let me see, that's right, but it's a feminine noun. And if we are willing to accept the assertions of gematria, the idea that sages of the past have buried truths in the interaction of numbers applied to each letter, or that each letter is itself a holy symbol, can we believe that the very gender of the title is insignificant here? Obviously not. However, the gender of the Hebrew noun for the wisdom is not often mentioned by writers of the Kabbalah, because it appears to be an irreconcilable problem of language. I think it's irreconcilable just based on the fact that once you reach that point, the two become one. So it's like when you mix a pack of Kool-Aid into some water and sugar, where can you say the water begins, the water ends, the sugar begins, and the Kool-Aid kicks in? It's kind of hard to differentiate once that alchemy has went down. I mean, at least that's my understanding at this point. It says, but let us here take the point of view that whatever gives birth is exercising a primary female quality at the moment of birth. Adam is the first symbolic male, but insofar as his rib became the first female, he conceived and gave birth, thus performing a female function. So just like the emperor is a clearly masculine figure, but he has if you ask me, I would say he has more feminine symbology than masculine. You know, even though we see the metal and iron, his armor clearly masculine, but yet that armor, his legs are crossed and forming a cross, which is a symbol of masculine, feminine, male, female, which is a balancing out, right? So I could dig it. All right. The female was inherent in the male. What we are describing is not exactly androgyny or even bisexuality, since it is a real transformation of the function of a given energy. Within all that is male, there is female. Within all that is female, there is male. Brings to mind the yin and yang symbol. White and black. On the white side, there's a dot of black. On the black side, there's a dot of white. That's showing that there is a balance of the feminine within the masculine, and there's also a balance of the masculine within the feminine. And also, when you start to turn that yin yang symbol, the colors begin to blur. And I believe that's what we're discussing right here. Oh, I'm sorry for yawning on y'all, but I want to knock this out. We're gonna get this work in. Well, because right now it is 4:11 a.m. on the West Coast. Okay, it says within all that is male, there's female. Within all that is female, there's male. In Jungian terms, the male harbors the perfect female image in its unconscious, as the female harbors the perfect male image in her unconscious. Oof. Let me drink some water, wake my game up. We still got a few more books to go through, and we're gonna get this work. Shout out to Adika Butler. I'm rocking this Mind Glow Media demonstration. It's pure fire. I'm actually waiting on this book to drop. When I say drop, I don't mean release. He's released the book. I purchased me a copy. I'm waiting to get it. Adika Butler is pretty dope. If you're not up on him, you should be. I'm going to take a quick break. Let me pause this demonstration, and I'm going to take a quick break because I want to kind of pep my game up. I ain't trying to go to sleep on nobody. So we're going to get back to it. Let me see. Where are we? All right here. All right. Give me a moment. Let me wake my game up. All right. Let's get back to it. Now, I'm going to read this last point that was made. Now, I hope I'm not boring you to death, because connections are definitely being made, at least for myself, in terms of the masculine and feminine. What comes to mind, first of all, is just the mere fact of supplication, of prayer, bringing your left and right hands together is a joining of the masculine and feminine. So let's read this paragraph from the top again. But let us here take the point of view that whatever gives birth is exercising the primary female quality at the moment of birth. Adam is the first symbolic male, but in as far as his rib became the first female, he conceived and gave birth, thus performing a female function. The female was inherent in the male. What we are describing is not exactly androgyny or even bisexuality, since it is a real transformation of the function of given energy. Within all that is male, there is female. Within all that is female, there is male. In Jungian terms, the male harbors the perfect image, the perfect female image in his unconscious, as the female harbors the perfect image, the perfect male image in her unconscious. These are images of the self as opposite gender, the contrasexual component. So not so much androgyny, but the concept of the opposing polarity in an unconscious state. These idealized qualities are personified as the Magna Mater, the great mother who is Bina, and as the wise old man, a personification of spiritual principles who is Hokmah. On the paths, the empress is anima, the emperor is animus. In Latin, anima means soul, while animus means spirit. The very concept of soul represents the enclosure or definition of boundaries of spirit. The hay creating boundaries around the spiritual yoke. Thus, the perfectly developed male type on the paths is the emperor, and the perfectly developed female type is the empress. These are archetypal images which we meet in rising on the plains and with which we actually converse on the paths. Whatever terms may be used to describe the emperor, he remains the bridge between the father, Hokmah, the son, Tiferet, because remember that the emperor card in terms of the path goes from Hokmah to Tiferet. So whatever, I'm reading it again, whatever terms may be used to describe the emperor, he remains the bridge between the father, Hokmah, and the son, Tiferet. And the very fact that the son of Tiferet is exalted in the sign of this path. Aries indicates that the emperor exercises some control of the solar energy of the higher self. Thus, the path of hay, this cat going crazy. Thus, the path of hay is called the constituted intelligence, meaning that it assists in the building up of the light of Tiferet from the utter darkness of the supernal triangle, as rational generic structure directs the rising of the planet from the intense darkness of the earth. The importance of Tiferet to the emperor is indicated by Crowley in his use of a sun behind the emperor's head, and in the overall two-color scheme. The card has been painted in Martian reds and sun yellows, warm colors suggesting the furious rush of activity, which may be short-lived. Now, in these two cards, the sky is orange, which is also related to the sun, which in terms of the chakra system would be the sacral, which we're dealing with sexual organs, the genitalia, which of course come in two kinds, masculine and feminine. And then we also have the hermaphroditic, which is masculine and feminine. So this all makes perfect sense. There are also martial overtones, although it is only in Waite's card with its armored figure that this is emphasized, which is somewhat surprising considering the Golden Dawn text, the general, the conqueror, hot, passionate, impetuous. The Golden Dawn card itself shows a ruler who, while he has absolute dominion, as is symbolized by the orb and cross in his left hand, is not a warrior. He is precise and firm, applying a mathematically measured reason to all things, but he does not wield the sword. The sword is carried not on this path of the fiery aspect of the Garden of Eden, but on his airy counterpart, the lovers. And while the driver of the chariot of the water aspect is Odin, god of war, he is not shown at battle. In fact, the greatest subsurface belligerence is with the earthy part of the garden, the Hierophant. It may now be suggested that these four cards, which constitute in terms of a fifth, the high priestess, constitute a practical formula of the crossing of the abyss. So that's the importance of light, because crossing the abyss, even though Da'ath represents knowledge, it is surrounded by the abyss. That's a darkness. That veil impedes the light from the supernal triad, which is Kether, Hokmah, and Binah, and it's filtered down to Tiferet, and then it's filtered down even more through Yesod to Malkuth. Where was I? It may now be suggested that these four cards, when considered in terms of a fifth, the high priestess, constitute a practical formula for the crossing of the abyss. They are the means of attaining the Garden of Eden, which is the amalgam of multiple states of energy. Now, I put a note in here to myself. Oh, I haven't got to the note yet. Pursuant to the garden theme, it must again be noted that Crowley proposes an interchange of the emperor with the star, which we believe to be a mistake. In dealing with the star, we describe the emperor as the fiery aspect of the Garden of Eden, to which the higher self relates, while the star is the Eden of the personality. In both cases, these are states where the general has just become specific, a pristine point where consciousness can look both forward and backward. Thus is sight attributed to Hay. This is the observation of the one. It is the first path to which a sensory function is attributed to the Sefer Yetzirah. Seeing, suggesting that sight is the first of the senses, as Aries is the first of the sequence of the zodiac, and is the first sign. And as the first sign, the Emperor Aries emerges directly from Chokmah, the sphere of the zodiac. So that makes sense. That makes definite sense that Aries would be associated with the Emperor because Chokmah is the sphere of the zodiac. And that the emperor is based in the Chokmah energy is symbolized by the gray stone throne on which he sits in the Golden Dawn and Wait cards. The constituting intelligence is understood as the first phase of a natural cycle. It stimulates the development of natural structures as Aries brings forth the spring. The Golden Dawn card symbolizes this by the Aries/Ram wand, the wielding of the Aries energy by the emperor, and by the ram beneath his feet. In this, one would expect the emperor to be represented as a dynamic and masculine figure at the very peak of his abilities. But
you can miss it going.
What's going on, bud?
We're gonna use Russian method.
All right.
So nothing's going on so far.
Okay.
What are you talking about, Dad?
I'm on here talking about the tarot, doing the YouTube. All right. Yeah, this is part of the reason why I'm rushing. My house is about to start waking up. So I'm gonna try to wrap this up. It says here the Golden Dawn card symbolizes this by the Aries/Ram wand, the wielding of the Aries energy by the emperor, and by the ram beneath his feet. In this one would expect the emperor to be represented as a dynamic and masculine figure at the very peak of his abilities. But the Golden Dawn and Crowley cards have taken both the Golden Dawn and Crowley cards have taken this approach. On the other hand, followed by Case in the Bolta version, represents the emperor as the traditional Ancient of Days. See, here we get another reference to the Ancient of Days or Father Time. The one who was older than time itself, the supernal father. Here there is disagreement as to whether the figure should be shown full face or in profile. We touched on this in Case versus Weight. The profile tradition having been accepted by the Marseilles deck, which shows the emperor seated facing the viewer's left. Crowley adopted the same symbolism, apparently agreeing that it is impossible for one to know the totality of the emperor while in the earthly existence. On the other hand, the Ancient of Days, bearded king seen in profile, is symbolic of Kether and its relationship to Ein Sof, not Chokmah. Presumably, this explains the decision of Mathers and Waite to show the emperor's full face. Most of the symbols on these cards are traditional. The veil of the abyss behind the Golden Dawn Emperor, Waite's Ankh cross, which is the Crux Ansata. The veil of the abyss behind the Golden Dawn Emperor, Waite's Ankh cross, or the one symbol on which all four cards agree, the orb of dominion. Crowley, however, has made some obscure symbolic references, the bee and the fleur-de-lis. Remember, we're going to look that up real soon. For example, are described by him as related to the generalization of the paternal power. Another obscure symbol is the eagle on the emperor's shield. The Marseilles card uses an eagle, though it is merely a reference to imperial power. But Crowley's eagle is two-headed with the crimson disc behind. He explained that this is the alchemist's red tincture related to the sun and gold. A similar white edge on his Empress card refers to the moon and to silver. One final aspect of Crowley's card is symbolically problematical. At least his explanation of it seems unsatisfactory. We refer to the lamb at the lower right of the card, of which he says, at his feet, couchant is the lamb and flag, to confirm this attribution on the lower plane. For the ram by nature is wild and a courageous animal, lonely in lonely places, whereas when tamed and made to lie down in green pastures, nothing is left but the docile, cowardly, gregarious, and succulent beast. Crowley was a fool. This is the theory of government. One may be delighted by Crowley's wit, but somewhat puzzled by his use of an accepted symbol of the meek and mild Christ to mean something docile, cowardly, gregarious, and even succulent. It is difficult to avoid the conclusion that this is another of Crowley's attacks on traditional Christianity, although the image is certainly inspired by the Golden Dawn's ram. I thought that was Crowley can be confusing, but here some of his references can be put into context. So let's look up some of these symbols. Let's look up first. Let's go through. This is J.E. Surlott's A Dictionary of Symbols. So let's look up the crux ansata, fleur-de-lis, left, ram, and some other symbols in here. So let's go to the crux ansata first. And as he would have it, he doesn't have the crux ansata in here. I know where to find it though. So let's go from here to the fleur-de-lis. He does speak of the Fisher King, and the Fisher King was mentioned. Of the Fisher King, he belongs to the Legend of the Grail, according to Marx and Nouvelle Recherche sur les littératures arthurine. This role of mythical monarch relates him to the apostle or fisherman of the Sea of Galilee. In Robert de Boron's work on this theme, the Fisher King becomes the rich fisherman, which Marx regards as confirmation of the thesis. Fishing symbolically is not just fishing for men, but casting the bait into the depths of one's own innermost nature in order to reach the gnosis. I think that's a dope understanding of Jesus Christ being the fisher of men. A lot of people assume that to be physical, but we see here it's actually, again, a mental process. Can't believe he doesn't have fleur-de-lis in here. Okay, let's move on. Let me look up cross. Maybe he has it on the cross. I mean, yeah. There's a lot of different crosses, but I don't see the fleur-de-lis. A lot of crosses. Okay, let's go and see if he has, let's see what he says about left. Only number 4 also. Yeah, they have left in here. That's why I say you gotta have more than one book on symbology, because you'll find this happens a lot. One book doesn't have, another book does. Let's look up the number 4. This is still a good book. I use it a lot. That's why I grabbed it. I have other books of symbology, but I grabbed my kind of like tried and true, which is J.E. Surlott's Dictionary of Symbols, J.C. Cooper's and Illustrated Encyclopedia of Symbols, and then Judica Ellis's books. Those are like my tried and true. So I usually, oh, he does have Fleur de Lis in here. Okay, let's read it. An heraldic flower, non-existent in nature, which has been a symbol of royalty from the earliest times. As an emblem, its base is an inverted triangle representing water. Above it is a cross, expressing conjunction and spiritual achievement, with 2 additional and symmetrical leaves wrapped around the horizontal arm. The central arm is straight and reaches upwards and reaches up heavenwards. The symbolism being evident. During the Middle Ages, the lease was regarded as an emblem of illumination and an attribute of the Lord. Okay. It doesn't have left in here. Let's look up the number 4. I probably look up numbers. Most of these books don't list individuals. So let's go to the numbers. Just to keep you from having to jump around. They usually put it all together. And we read Paul Foster Case's breakdown of the number 4. Let's see what J.E. Surlott has to say. Symbolic of the earth, the terrestrial space, of the human situation, of the external, natural limits of the minimum, awareness of totality, and finally, of rational organization. Some of the similar thoughts expressed by Case. It is equated with the square and the cube. You can see that clearly visible. And the cross representing the 4 seasons and points of the compass. A great many material and spiritual forms are modified after the quaternary. It is the number associated with tangible achievement and with the elements. In mystic thought, it represents the tetramorphs. What the hell is a tetramorph? You mentioned you better have it in here. Oh, here you go, tetramorphs. This is an illustration of quaternary principle linked with the concept of situation, just as the ternary is connected with that of activity, with the intuitive sense of spatial order, which is probably why Paul Foster Case introduced the cube of space while discussing the emperor. It is to Christian tetramorphs and their synthesis of the 4 symbols of the evangelist that we are bound to look for the purest and truest expressions of this ancient and universal idea. Megalithic culture. All right, but you gonna get up in about an hour?
Huh?
You gonna get up in about an hour?
Like around 6:15,
Okay. Sweet dreams, man.
because then I'm going to school tonight early.
All right, better it up. That we are bound to look for the purest and truest expression of this ancient and universal idea. Megalithic antiquity was given to expressing the struggle of the gods against the monsters that, from the beginnings of creation, sought to devour the sun. When they formed the cosmos out of chaos, the gods, in order to safeguard what they had created, placed the lion. Oh, the tetramorph is the lion, ox, man, and eagle, most likely. So yeah, I get it. It's the 4 elements. So what else? Okay, let's look up orb. It doesn't have order here. That's odd. Okay, let's look up cube while we're still in this book before I move on to the next. Oh, let's look up Aries. Why not? The ram, a symbol of the creative impulse and of the spirit at the moment of its inception, the first sign of the zodiac. In Hindu symbolism, it stands for Parabrahman, that is, for the undifferentiated whole. Because the zodiac is a symbol of the cycle of existence, Aries, its first sign, stands for the original cause or the thunderbolt which emerges from the Akasha of Pisces. This is the second allusion to the thunderbolts of Odin. We know that's because of the trident that Shiva carries, Odin, Poseidon, and even Satan. That is, okay, we go back. In Hindu symbolism, it stands for Parabrahman, that is, for the undifferentiated whole, because the zodiac is a symbol of a cycle of existence. Aries, its first sign, stands for the original cause or the thunderbolt which emerges from the Akasha of Pisces, that is, from the primordial waters. Aries, because it stands for the initial impulse through which the potential becomes actual, which we discussed, is also related to the dawn and spring, and generally to the beginning of any cycle, process, or creation, constituting intelligence, authorship, ownership. In Egypt, the ram was a symbol of Amun-Ra, and the ram was depicted, and the god was depicted with ram's horns as regards to human physiology. Aries controls the head and the brain, that is to say, the organs which are the center of the individual's physical and spiritual energies, as Brahman is the center of the cosmic forces. What else was I supposed to look up? Cube. That's cross, crook, Cybele. Cube, among solid forms, it is the equivalent of the square. Hence, it stands for Earth or the material world of the four elements. Dennis, the Carthusian, pointed out that cubic objects are not capable of rotation, as are spheres, and that, therefore, they represent stability. This explains why the cube frequently forms part of allegories illustrating the solidity and persistence of the virtues. It also explains why in symbols and emblems, thrones or chariots are sometimes given cubical form. Well, this just, for me, was a Star Trek reference. The Borg roll around on a big ass cube, even though they roll around in other geometric shapes, spheres and triangles also, right? But you see that the cube is indicative of Earth, which is feminine, and also consciousness. But that might be why he's sitting on it. He's on his square, right? So let's see here. They have the crux ansata in here. This is J.C. Cooper's Illustrated Encyclopedia of Symbols. He does not have the crux ansata in here, which is not a big surprise. Let's look up left. I'm certain that his book will break down left. Remember, he's holding the orb in his left hand and the ankh, or the elongated symbol of Venus, in his right. So left. The left side is usually the sinister, dark, illegitimate, lunar, inward-looking aspect and represents the past. In Christianity, at the judgment, the sheep are on the right hand and the goats on the left. And in crucifixion scenes, The good thief is depicted as on the right hand of Christ and the bad thief on the left. The Virgin Mary on the right with St. John on the left, or the church on the right and the synagogue on the left. In China, on the contrary, the left was the side of honor as the weak yin side, since the right side, being yang in strength, tends to violence, and so too self-destruction. In time of war, a time of violence and destruction, the position was reversed. Let's look up what he had to say about the cube. He has a lot on the cross, but nothing on the crux. But let's go to cube. Right now. With the sphere as the primordial state, a cyclic beginning in a movement, the cube represents the final state of a cycle in immobility. Symbolically, it is squaring the circle. The cube is also truth as being always the same, however viewed. It is perfection, completion, stability, static perfection, immaculate law. It is also the forbidden cross. In traditional architecture, the cube as stability is used as the foundation stone, the lower part of the building, with the circle of the dome as the higher. Alchemic, the cube represents salt, the product of the crystallization of sulfur and quicksilver. Chinese, the earth deity with the sphere as the heavenly. Hebrew, the holy of holies. Islamic, the Kaaba is a cube. Stability, static perfection. Maya, the earth, the tree of life grows from the center of the cube. Let's see what he has to say about the orb. Oh, he says see globe. So I probably should have saw globe in my guy's book, J.E. Sirlock. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Let's go to globe. The world as a circle and sphere, eternity, the self-contained universal sway, dominion over the earth, power, imperial dignity. The globe shares the symbolism of the sphere as wholeness, usually held in the left hand. It represents far-reaching dominion, either of a deity or sovereign. A globe surmounting a pillar depicts the sky. Highlight that. My footage. Excuse me, say more. I really don't like writing in J.E. Sirlock's book, but I will this time. Globe. And he said a globe surmounted by a cross signifies the rule of Christ over the world, also dominion by faith in Christ. Let's see what he has to say about the number 4. Look up numbers. 4 from the front, 4. From 4, the first solid figure is produced. It is a spatial scheme or order of manifestation, a static as opposed to the circular or and dynamic. It is wholeness, totality, completion, solidity, the earth, order, the rational, measurement, relativity, justice. There are 4 cardinal points: seasons, winds, sides of the square, arms of the cross, rivers of paradise, and the infernal regions, seas, sacred mountains, watches of the night and day, quarters of the moon, tetramorphs. And in the west, there are 4 elements. There are 5 elements in the east. Divine quaternary. It is in contrast to the Trinity. 4 is an emblematic number in the Old Testament. The 4 rivers of paradise forming the cross, the 4 quarters of the earth, etc., are almost universal symbolism. The quaternary can be depicted as the quarterfoil, as well as the square and cross. Which brings to mind also the swastika. Let's look up mountains, why not? The cosmic mountain is the world center and unbalanced through which the polar axis runs and around which glide the dragons of the cosmic powers. All right, I want to get to Judica Illis. I believe the crux on the side of it is here. After that, I'm gonna dive into the Cabalistic Encyclopedia. I don't think this has. Let's see. Okay, let's look at that. Town cross, 4-way. I'm going back. Let's see. I was almost certain it was in this book. Oh, on side across, page 83. All right, we have the on-sided cross. It says derived from the Egyptian Ankh, the on-sided cross combined the Tau with the earth symbol. Sometimes it was viewed as a human figure. Like every other kind of cross, it was assimilated to Christianity early in the medieval period. All right, so let's dive into. Now you gotta remember too, if you're gonna follow these studies, because you're gonna be on this card for a week. Think about all of the deities that were mentioned, and you look all of those up. Woden, Poseidon, Shiva, all of these will give you insights into aspects of the emperor. So what we're going to look up now, and it's like Cabalistic Encyclopedia, Godwin's work. First, we're going to look up let me see. Let's look up Hay. I do. Oh, wow. Hmm. I apologize. Well, I guess that would leave. I guess that's it. I apologize for being abrupt. Um, Working some weird ass hours at the moment, and I'm just trying to get it in when and where I can. Normally I do a little better preparation beforehand, but hey, we're gonna make it do what it do. Again, I sincerely think that some dope connections were made, and I look forward to moving on to the next, and the next being the card of the Hierophant. So, like we always do about this time, let's wrap it up. Thank you for spending this time with me. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to shamelessly plug my book, which is The Occult Meaning of Masonry, Its Symbols, and the Chakra System. What I'll do is, I'm going to go grab my actual book. I'm pretty sure I got an image in here somewhere. But I'm working on the follow-up, which is a workbook. Still doing some research. I got the general format laid out. But I will say this, you don't have to wait for the workbook to come out. Get your copy now. And when the workbooks come out, you can put that work in and make the book your own, you know? So I would just say, if you're interested, go to pillarbookpublishing.com, click on this image and make your purchase. I guarantee you that you won't be disappointed in that. The feedback I've gotten has been both mind-blowing and humbling. It's a book that will reach you on your level, whether you be an adept, a hierophant, an initiate, even if you're just kicking tires on this spirituality and don't know where to begin. This book is a good starting point. So go on to my website, pillarbookpublishing.com, purchase your copy, and discover these mysteries of correspondences. Now, even though this book has the title of Masonry, it has the word masonry in the title. This is not a book just for Master Masons. If you're curious as to the deeper meaning of Masonry, this is a book for you. If you are a Master Mason, this will help to clarify some of the things you may have learned in your lodge meetings and never knew. But again, thank you everyone for tuning in. If you have any questions, any feedback, positive or negative, hey, bounce it off me. And I guarantee you that I'll definitely move it upwards. It'll reach the people it need to reach. With all that being said, get you some rest. I'm about to enjoy, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Peace.